So we have a very special presentation coming up next. We're going to have 3 security experts from the banking industry to talk about how their banks are working together to face increased cyber threats. We have Petra, Klein, Group Chief Information Security Officer from Swedbank, Sofia Nacke, Strategic Cyber Threat Intelligence Analyst from SEB, and Caroline Gustavsson, Deputy Head IT Security from Handelsbanken. Please join me in welcoming them all to the stage.
So, hi, welcome to us. We will now take you into the wonderful world of cybersecurity. If you look at the daily work, we are heavy competitors. We are fighting about customers, we are fighting about market shares. When it comes to security, we are team players. So we will now talk about how we actually have taken out those boundaries and created a really amazing cybersecurity collaboration between the 3 biggest banks in Sweden. And how did it all start? We had a very long history of information sharing between our CIRTs. They shared in indicators of compromise, but also in the CISO community. But we're missing the systematic information sharing. And we were not sharing threat intelligence. During 2020, there was a lot of DDoS attacks in the Swedish financial industry. And we started to share information. Now we are exposed to DDoS attacks, and we warn the other banks. But we can do so much more. There is so much more to do. We also had a lot of touch points toward the external parties, so we can be so much smarter together. So, we, the CEOs of the banks, together with the CIOs, said to us, this is something you get support from. Start to collaborate. So we created a collaboration agreement between SEB, Handelsbanken and Swedbank, and we set up an executive management team. That is where I'm sitting, together with my peers from the other banks. And we are supporting when it comes to funding, clearing the boundaries, making sure that the teams can work really efficient. Then we have an operating management team where we are getting information flowing between the steering and the teams that actually are doing the work. And Caroline will still talk about how the working groups are working together. We have amazing 40 people in all the 3 big banks working together in these 4 working groups. And this is where we are building resilience. When we get the people together that actually know the stuff, that is when we are creating a really sustainable financial industry. And these are meeting every second week, physical meetings. And the lead is distributed between the different banks. We have 1 lead from SEB, Handelsbanken and Swedbank, and then these are sending up status information to the working groups. And the leader of the operating management team is also a member of the executive management team. So we are really making sure that the information is flowing, both between the working groups, but also up in the organization. Then how are we collaborating with between the public and the private sector? During 2021, the Swedish National Cybersecurity Center was established. I will not translate these government agencies to English, but it's the Swedish Signals Intelligence. We have the FRA, the Swedish version of NSA. They are together today working in this Swedish National Cybersecurity Center. When they asked for a pilot sector to start up to test the center, we knocked on the door and said that we have this cybersecurity collaboration, we have a long history of information sharing, and this is really working efficient. So why not build the National Cybersecurity Center on our collaboration and influence other sectors? So they chose us, and we have been sitting there testing out, and we also have a lot of working groups within the NCSC. From 1st of July this year, we will have a new head of NCSC, that's FRA. So we think this will really improve the governance, because today there's like a lot of owners of the center, so we really believe in this part. So this is a real amazing achievement, and Caroline will now talk about what are we doing in the working groups.
Yeah, thank you, Petra. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm Caroline, I'm from the Blue Bank. I know there are 2 blue banks in Sweden, but for me it's only 1 blue bank, and it's Handelsbanken. Yeah, okay. So, like Petra said, we were knocking on the door to the National Cybersecurity Center, and we organized that door knocking in the operative management team. So the operative management is like a Spock right now. And we organized it from the beginning like a project. So we have that in mind. We need to knock on this door a lot of times, but we also wanted to start some internal effectiveness by doing a lot of work that we can use in the bank, not in the collaboration between the private and the public sector. So we established a project and we sort of established all the teams in the threat intelligence, cyber capability and third-party risk, personal and physical security and awareness and competence. So we started by structured the way of working. How are we going to collaborate? We prioritized and guided each team on a pretty detailed level at first, but now it's like growing organic. So the management team right now is more like an escalated function and making sure the information flows like Petra was talking about further or before. Okay, so just a quick note about the four teams. We have the threat intelligence teams, and actually we started with two teams, one operative and one tactic strategic. But we realized quite soon that we need to gather all the knowledge and the competence, whether it's operative or tactic or strategic. So we now have a group that's they cover all methods, techniques, and the mode that the attacker is using. So we gather all the competence in one group, and we sort of felt the lack of information sharing between public and private sector, like we told you, and that's why we took from the heat map. Yeah, thank you. So we established a heat map based on the meter attack, and that's what Sofia is going to talk about soon enough. So I'm not going to spoil that more. Okay, so the next box is cyber capability and third-party risk, and here we focused on how do we think the future managed system for ESMS will look like? Today, of course, this is a cornerstone in our security strategies in all the banks. But we often work in like, okay, we have an ESMS, we need to develop and we need to deploy it into the organization. But looking forward, we noticed that we need to have some more continuously working. So we go from having the ESMS, deploying the new, in more working in a continuous way of working. So we think that will be the key word in the future. Continuous assurance, we need to continuously prioritize between and balancing between threat risks and regulations, and we also need to have the continuous improvement in our daily work. So focus on follow up and improve instead of develop and establish a new ESMS. We are also in this group working a lot with the secure development process in the bank. We work a little bit different, but we can share knowledge and we can share how do we establish requirements, how do we follow up controls, and so on. So this is also a huge focus right now. How do we secure our development in the bank? Yes. I can't go through all the bullets because then we're running out of time. So please reach out to us afterwards if there's some bullet you want to have more information about. But the third one, we only have one bullet, and it's the insider threat. And we establish it within this group because we think it's had a lot to do with how we onboard new people. how should the employment life cycle management work, and how do we offboard people? So that's our starting point right now, and we have more questions than answers right now. You probably know a lot of these discussions in your organization as well. And how do we balance the monitoring question regarding the personal integrity and so on? So a lot of questions, no answers yet. And the finally one, the awareness and the competence. Here we do a lot of joint events, for example, on the Security Month, but we also setting up regular events together to educate and spread the awareness within our banks, but also through our customers and so on. So yeah, I think I'm heading off to you, Sofia.
Yeah, and I was just told by Petra that she wants to
I just want
make a
to
few
add
notes.
something. We talked about DDoS. If you go into the Swedish National Cybersecurity Center, you can find a DDoS white paper. That is where, in this collaboration, we have actually produced a lessons learned from us being like the target of DDoS attacks and sharing how you can mitigate that. So that is one of the deliveries you can actually find from this collaboration. So then you understand the history behind the paper. So go in and read that and give us feedback. Sorry, no, Sofia, I just want to tell that.
It's important that you say that, Petra, because one of the things that we gathered around in the early when we started, it was the transparency. That this is not something that we should do only in the bank and keep it in a bank. If we can share it with you and with other companies, we will do that, because we think it's important to share.
It is. All right. So I'll talk more about the heat map that we created. But before I go into the presentation, I just want to give a shout out to all the contributors for this work. There were a lot of organizations and individuals who took part. So it's not just me standing here on the stage and presenting it. But let's go on to probably the most obvious thing for this collaboration. When we're working together with the private and the public sector, the main challenge is obviously information sharing. How do we share information regarding threat actors in a way that allows everyone to contribute? And the private sector, we are becoming increasingly more aware of that we need to share information on threats in order to be able to fight the cyber attacks. But the public sector, for obvious reasons, has their limitations on this. So the solution was to shift the focus from talking about threat actors into talking about the techniques that we saw them utilizing. So basically, instead of talking about individuals, we're instead talking about behaviors. And then you might wonder, why are we not just sharing IOCs like we usually do? And I'll explain this by looking at the pyramid of pain concept that I suppose you are quite aware of. And the pyramid of pain concept, it's like a decade old now, and it categorizes indicators based on the difficulty for an attacker to utilize them. So at the bottom, we have indicators such as IP addresses and hash values. But as we move up the pyramid, these indicators become increasingly more difficult for an attacker to change or modify. So basically, this concept, it highlights that you should focus on the top of the pyramid in order to create a valuable and impactful way to prevent and detect cyber attacks. And obviously, we are banks. We not only like to, but we have to create value for our clients and our customers. So for us, it was an obvious choice that we need to focus on the TTPs in order to create a valuable source or impact that will have its value over time. So in this collaboration, we decided to let's focus on low frequency, high impactful deliverables that will remain its value not just here and now, but also going forward. So the framework which we based our work on is an oldie but a goldie. And I suppose that most of you are quite aware of the attack framework by Petra. But for those of you who aren't, The Mitra Corporation was founded around 66 years ago, and it started out as a military think tank in the US. And the ATTACK stands for Adversarial Tactics, Techniques, and Common Knowledge. Common knowledge is important, otherwise you don't get a cool word out of it. We were talking about abbreviations before. And just to be clear, the ATTACK framework is a very small subset of the many different projects that the Mitra Corporation has produced. However, it was created around 11 years ago, and since then you can really say that it has proven useful and very valuable. Yeah, and the framework, it's a comprehensive knowledge base based on the tactics and techniques that we see threat actors using. And it creates a standardized way of categorizing and understanding the cyber attacks from an operational perspective and how they progress over time. And as you can see on the right side here, it's also organized into matrices that represents various platforms, detailing specific techniques that an adversary uses to achieve its objectives. And now this is a bit of a wall of text, and I'm not expecting you to be able to read everything, just to be clear. But this is what the framework looks like. And on the top here, we have the tactics. This is what an attacker needs in order to be able to achieve its objective. And the tactics are categorized into 14 different columns, and they're based on the Mitra kill chain, which is an evolvement of the more commonly known cyber kill chain, which was produced by Lockheed Martin, I think, yeah. So essentially, the tactics gives us a way of looking at the progression of a cyber attack from the threat actor perspective. But on the other hand, on the bottom here, we have the techniques. And this is how an attacker can achieve its objective. And to give you an example, all the techniques are baked into the tactics. So if we take a tactic like initial access, there you will find techniques such as spear phishing. Another example is in the middle there we have defense evasion. And here we find techniques such as obfuscating malicious code or leveraging trusted processes. Yeah, and the framework is updated 2 times per year. You might think that's not enough, but it's a good way to ensure that it reflects the current threat landscape and also remains relevant for all its users. We are one of them. So let's take an example. Petra. She's really interested in a specific technique that she knows lies within the tactic privilege escalation. And in this case, she's interested in the technique process injection. And when you open process injection, you are faced with a knowledge base, which gives you the essential details of what you need to know in order to be able to gather the basic information regarding the technique. And for those of you with laser eyes, you can see that there is sub-techniques listed. And in this case, we have 12 sub-techniques that are related to the technique process injection. And we find them there. And sub-techniques, they have kind of a parent-child relationship to the main techniques. And they have been given names as well as ID numbers. And now that we know what we need to know regarding the tactics and techniques that we know that these threat actors are using, we obviously also need to know how do we protect ourselves from this. And the framework has thought about that as well. So we also are provided with recommendations for mitigation and detection strategies. And this is very straightforward, so easy to use and easy to apply. So now that you have a knowledge base of the attack framework, I'll go into the process and go back to the collaboration. So phase 1 included that we created a threat profile. For every organization who had a threat profile, they brought it forward. And in this case, a threat profile meant that you had a list of threat actors that you assessed have the capacity and the intent to constitute a threat to your organization. And this includes both assessed threat actors and confirmed ones. Once we had this list of threat actors, we baked them together in a joint list and went over to the next phase, which was the analytical process. And here we took the list of threat actors and mapped it to open reporting, where we found techniques listed related to those specific threat actors. So basically what we did is that each time a technique has been listed, we collect it and we map it towards the MITRE attack techniques that we have. And in this way, we have generated a heat map. So here we have the frequency of mentions for every technique based on the threat actor lists that we have already decided that these are important for the financial sector. And this is what it looks like. And this is an example of the result, just before, so everyone knows. And what you can say is like we are aware of that this represents a good enough view, although it's not representative of our collaboration with the NCSC that Petra talked about before. However, it does share some striking similarities on the output. And the result that we have, it's relevant from a statistical perspective, as I mentioned before. It's frequency-based. But however, it's important to note that this result is not representative of an attack chain. It only lists the amount of mentions from an attack perspective. So for the financial sector, we have a lot of mentions regarding ransomware attacks. But that's also quite descriptive for our threat landscape that we have. And between us three banks, SEB, Handelsbanken, and Swedbank, we took this approach and decided, let's make it a bit more advanced for us, because we have the capacity to do so. So we decided to focus on the most advanced threat actors that we know of, and what techniques and tactics can we see that they are using. And this includes threats that automated defenses won't catch, where threat intelligence more or less is required in order to guide defense techniques and exercises such as threat hunting or red team exercising. But this was specific for us three banks. So now that we have the list, you might wonder, what is it good for? What do we do with this list? And for us, this creates awareness. Right now we have so many attacks happening that it's hard to know what is actually what should we focus on. So when we have a list of the 15 most used attack techniques by the threat actors that we're interested in, we know which ones should we focus on. In other words, it creates a prioritization. And we haven't had that collectively in our sector before. So for other banks that does not have the resources, we can have a joint list that says, okay, for the financial sector, this is what you should focus on. Because essentially, if we focus on everything, we're also focusing on nothing. So, my last slide. The key takeaways. We are very well aware of that not all techniques are included in the MITRE framework, but it is a good baseline for the work. And we're also aware of that there is an availability bias on the reporting, which we base the analysis on, which is the foundation for the heat map. But nevertheless, we have really shown that this method works. And the first thing that was so good about it was that, as I mentioned before, there is a challenge when we work the private and the public sector. But when we base our work on something that we're all familiar with, we're able to overcome these challenges. So we might not talk the same language, but we understand the same core, you know? And secondly, the group was based out of people who have experience working in both the public and the private sector. This created a lot of understanding for each other. So I know about your limitations, but I also know about your opportunities. And also minimized the level of conflict that can appear based on what everyone can actually contribute with. And lastly, our focus was to create a product that we can keep building on. It was never supposed to be the perfect product, but nevertheless, it's it's a good start, and it's a great way for the future collaboration in the private and public partnership. That's it from my side. Any additions from you guys?
This is the first time we're showing this outside of the financial sector, so you are really the first audience. Yeah. So a bit of present for you today.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we're very happy and lucky to have you here. Would you mind taking some questions?
Of course.
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
So if there are questions in the room, we have some questions on Menti. But if you have a question in the room, also please put your hand up. We'll start with Menti and then we'll come to your question.
So the first question from Menti is about collaborations with the other banks. I'm assuming the other blue bank and the smaller ones. Do you also collaborate, share insights with them?
Yeah, I can take that part. So we are also members of the Swedish Bankers Association, Bankföreningen. So we are actually taking all the knowledge and we are sharing to all the other banks, because we needed to start somewhere. So as we said, let's start small and start to create trust and collaboration between our 3 banks, but we are sharing everything and also up to the National Cybersecurity Center. It's important. Really good question.
We have a question in the room just there.
Thank you for a very good presentation. I'm a bit keen about the Swedbank, because what I understand, you are having your first bank on the cloud, and if there is any specific difference between the other two and Swedbank. when it comes to?
You mean the internet bank? Some parts of.
Exactly.
I mean, we have like a mindset called cloud first. We should focus on core business. We should do what we are best at, and if we are not best, we should buy that as a cloud service. But I wouldn't say that we are on cloud. It's like parts of it that are on cloud, so it's very based on each business. So it's definitely more. I would say the majority is still on-prem.
Okay. The next question and the last one: how do you agree on the goals for your cooperation?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. From the very beginning, we have like input from the strategic management team, and then we took it down. We deep dived it in the operative management team, and we're like, okay, where does it hurt? Where do we struggle? Why can't we come forward? So that's why and that was why we ended up in the threat intelligence and the competence and awareness and so on. And then it was like staffed in a project, but now, like you said, we have like 40, 50 people working, and it's growing organic, and actually they set the goals in each team. It's been like a way of working in the team, setting new goals all the time, and they just establish it in the operative management, and then we talk to you, and you confirm that this is the right way to work. Yeah.
We also see very high engagement. I mean, you're not only protecting your bank, you're also protecting the financial sector and Sweden in the end. So, I mean, I can see when I'm at the steering committee meetings, it's amazing. We are doing so much for the society. And I see when you have the teams, you're like also, like you can see the spark in the eye. So this is really also very engaging for the employees.
Yeah, and if we look at, see if I can switch back to the teams again. Last slide. Oh, here it was. Sorry. So the last one. This is actually, I think we established it like last summer or something. But it was like the organic driven, and the people within the collaboration was like, okay, we need to do this as well. We need to set up goals and so on. So it's really driven by the employees in the teams that says this is the way forward. So I talked about a little bit of the awareness, and one of the bullets that's not in this one, but I actually thought about it when I look at you, where are all the women? I don't know. It's just on stage. So that's also something that we actually have start working together with. How can we inspire and attract more women to the tech industry? And we think that the financial sector can also be a part of that.
But regarding the goals also, it's from working in one of these groups, it's important to set goals that you know is a challenge, but it also is somehow achievable. So we can learn from each other. When we're working together, we know that we are really good at some parts. Swedbank and Handelsbanken are really good at maybe other parts. And how can we, leverage that from each other and as a joint effort create something that's even better? If we set the goal up here and we know that this is never achievable, like we will never be able to have mitigations for every threat out there, then it also kills the engagement a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, we have more questions from Menti. When you work with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, from which countries do you see the most attacks? If you are allowed to share that or want to, I guess.
I think it's quite obvious.
Well, we know where the botnets come from, but
but obviously the increase in attacks that we've seen, they're very much related to the increased geopolitical tension. And I think we all know which country we're talking about when we're saying that the increased tension is coming from a specific place, but it's difficult to estimate. We know where the threat actors are located or assessed to be located, but since this collaboration was not focused on the threat actors specifically, we focused on the techniques instead to avoid having that kind of discussions when we're working together with the public sector who does not like to talk about that.
Yeah, one more from Menti. So you talked a little bit about this. They are wondering the data and insight that you actually do share. So I'm assuming that they want technical details on what you are sharing and what kind of insight you have gained from that, the specific things you are sharing.
Difficult to answer now, because I would actually want to have one of my tech guys with me to answer that question. But maybe that can be something for the next presentation or the next year.
We have one more question at the front, I think, Mikael.
Thank you. So this kind of cooperation sounds great. Is there a way for your leadership management to talk to management in other sectors and share, so like we could get buy-in from the leadership of, I don't know, power, public sector, everywhere, that they realize that they also need to do what you're doing and get the same kind of cooperation in place? Is there any avenue we can, or you can look into there, or do your leadership go to forums that are like cross business sectors and so on?
We are everywhere. I mean, we really want to inspire other sectors. The message is do something, just as you say, don't create the perfect start somewhere. So we are actually going to be on the startup of the energy sector in NCSC in April. So we will go there to talk about how we are doing. We also said we can share the collaboration agreement. We can share the strategies. We want to produce a white paper of how we started this collaboration and how we can share that with other sectors. Because we need to have all levels of collaboration. Because we have the series today are really there like years before us, but the threat intel part. And when it comes to the heat map, we hope we can share it more broader. I know that they have shown it to the telecom sector, energy sector.
The financial sector is like the, what do you call it? The start.
The pilot, yeah.
The pilot for this kind of collaboration. And I know that the next phase will go more into the telecom sector. So obviously they will draw some pulls from our work already. But yeah.
No, so we are definitely, if we want to go everywhere. We have been to the MS Business Conference. Then the food sector called me and said, how can we start? So if we can inspire others, we want to help and support. So we take a lot of time to be out externally. Sometimes I'm afraid my manager will ask me, what are you actually doing during the days? Because I'm like out talking about food. Yeah. But definitely, we have full support to inspire other sectors.
Great. Okay. Any more questions? Thumbs up. Good. Well, we're very happy that you came. I hope that you come back. Great to be building these connections. And please join me in thanking them for a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much.